Welcome to the 5th episode of the Brown Nose India video diary. Today was a much more relaxing day than the previous ones on this trip, because instead of having to spend 4 or 5 hours in the back of a bus bumping along the roads of central India, I was able to pass a very pleasant time driving around Khajuraho and the nearby villages looking at the famous temples here. After the Taj Mahal, Khajuraho is probably the second most famous and second most visited tourist site in India, and there's very good reasons for that. The temples here are absolutely spectacular. They were built as far back as the 9th century AD and are still in pretty good condition, although restoration work is obviously being carried out on some of them. After the collapse of the Chandela Empire in the 13th century, they lay undisturbed in the forest until they were rediscovered by a British Army officer in the 19th century and revealed to a waiting world. That's not to say locals didn't know about the temples, it's just that they didn't tell anybody else about them. The countryside here is also quite beautiful, although it's quite depressing driving along some of the country lanes and seeing the farmers carrying out back-breaking labour in the fields, or going into the villages and seeing the levels of poverty there. It's kind of a shame that at least some of the wealth that has been generated by tourism hasn't yet gone down into the villages, at least in any sort of meaningful manner. Anyway, back to the temples for a minute. Of course they're famous for their architecture, but they're even better known for the erotic sculptures that you can see in some of them. In a way, this is a bit of a marketing trick, because actually the erotic sculptures only form a small proportion of the overall statuary you see on the temples, but naturally they're the ones that capture the attention. I myself actually enjoyed seeing some of the more everyday scenes on the stone. For example, a woman looking at herself in a mirror, or another woman brushing her hair, or a man carrying rocks to help build the temples. These are the ones that captured my attention. In a way, you can see the temples as the equivalent of a modern day server. They captured and they stored all the key data about the Chandela Empire when it was at its zenith, and you can still access it and see it and appreciate it. So overall I quite enjoyed Khajuraho. I would say I much preferred Orcha, but here was pretty enjoyable. I guess my only complaint was that it's a little bit too touristy. When you get out of your car, you're surrounded by a gaggle of touts trying to promote all types of trinkets to you, and it can be a bit of a hassle to get them to leave you. But apart from that, it's okay. So tomorrow I'm leaving Khajuraho and heading off for Varanasi, this time by plane rather than by road. Varanasi is the holiest city in India, and it's located on the river Ganges. I went there a couple of years ago and had an absolutely wonderful time, but even when I left it I felt that I hadn't quite been able to absorb as much as I wanted to. So this time I'm hoping I can take a little bit more in and really enjoy the atmosphere of the place. So who knows, maybe tomorrow night I'll be broadcasting from the banks of the river Ganges in Varanasi. But if not, I'll certainly be talking from my hotel there. Good night.